All right, ready to dive deep into Rumi's Masnavi.
Let's do it.
You've shared some incredible excerpts with us. I'm ready to unpack all the wisdom in these verses. We're talking about some big stuff here, right? Love, faith, reason.
And the nature of reality itself.
Exactly. That's right. It's really everything.
Rumi doesn't shy away from the big questions.
Yeah, he doesn't. And what's so fascinating to me is even though, he was writing back in the 13th century, this stuff still feels so relevant today.
Absolutely, yeah. Across the centuries, it's like he's speaking right to us.
I totally agree. One of the things that really stood out to me was how Rumi defines love.
Okay.
He calls it a sweet madness,
Hmm.
which sounds a little paradoxical.
Yeah, it does. It does, doesn't it?
Right.
It's a bit of a contradiction there.
Yeah. What's he getting at there?
Well, I think what Rumi is saying is that love isn't just, this neat and tidy emotion. It's not just all like Hallmark cards and roses. It's this force that can completely upend our lives, shake us to our core. And in that upheaval, in that craziness, that's where we find a path closer to the divine.
Okay, I see. So maybe you're saying we need to embrace a little of that craziness, that, divine craziness, to experience true love, the kind of love that connects us to something bigger than ourselves.
Precisely, yeah. And this kind of connects to another key theme that we see in Rumi's work, which is the limitations of human reason.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, he has this really, incredibly vivid image of Mount Sinai quaking with love when it's touched by God's presence.
Wow. I mean, that's powerful imagery. It's like he's saying love is something that you feel, something that you experience. It's not just something that you think about,
That's not an intellectual exercise.
Right.
It's not about dissecting love with logic.
Right.
Rumi's suggesting, sometimes our intellect can actually get in the way of us really experiencing love in its purest form.
I can relate to that because I feel like I overthink things so much that I miss out on the actual experience. It's like I'm building a wall between myself and what I'm trying to understand.
Absolutely. You're putting up a barrier there.
Yeah.
And you hit on something really important there.
Yeah.
Rumi compares trying to describe love with words to a pen breaking and paper tearing. The tools we're using to express it are failing us.
Okay.
He's suggesting that language, which is a product of our rational minds, just isn't equipped to capture love's essence.
So are you saying we should just give up trying to understand it altogether, just surrender to the mystery?
Not necessarily. Rumi encourages us to go beyond the intellect, tap into other ways of knowing.
Okay.
Through feeling, through direct experience, intuition.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's less about defining love and more about experiencing it.
Yeah.
Almost like diving into the ocean rather than just looking at it from the shore.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another, I think, important theme in Rumi's work, which is this delicate balance between trusting in God and taking practical action in the world.
Right. And I was so intrigued by that story about the lion and the hare, and the hare is like, okay, I trust in God, but I'm also going to come up with a plan to make sure I don't get eaten by this lion.
Right, exactly. And it seems like a contradiction. On one hand, he's saying complete surrender to the divine.
Right.
But on the other hand, he's saying, well, you should probably use your intellect and your capabilities to deal with life's challenges.
So it's not blind faith, like just close your eyes and jump and hope everything's going to be okay?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Remember that proverb, trust in God, yet tie the camel's leg.
Oh, I love that proverb. Yeah.
It's a beautiful encapsulation of that idea.
Yeah.
Have faith, but also take responsibility.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But how do we know when to trust and when to act? How do we recognize God's guidance in our lives? That's something I struggle with.
That's where it gets really interesting. Because Rumi suggests that God is giving us these little hints, these little bits of guidance, but in subtle ways. He encourages us to pay attention to synchronicities, unexpected opportunities, those intuitive nudges that we get in life.
Okay, so it's about being aware, being present enough to notice those signs.
Yes.
But how does that tie into his ideas about love?
That's a great question. And it leads us to what I think is one of Rumi's most profound teachings. This idea that our individual sense of self can actually be a barrier to experiencing true union with the divine.
Okay.
He uses this striking analogy, knocking at a friend's door and being told there's no room for two eyes.
There's no room for my ego and the divine? Like they can't coexist?
Exactly. And in Sufism, the mystical tradition that Rumi was a part of, This points to the idea of final Arno, the annihilation, the dissolving of the ego.
Wow.
Pretty intense stuff.
That sounds really intense, but how do we dissolve our ego? I mean, it feels like such a fundamental part of who we are.
Yeah, well, it's not about completely eradicating the self. It's more about recognizing that our ego, with all its desires and attachments, is just a small part of who we truly are.
Okay.
And that by letting go of those attachments, by surrendering to something larger than ourselves, we can experience this much deeper, much more expansive sense of being.
So it's about transcending those limitations, those boundaries that our ego creates, those walls that we put up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing this interconnectedness of all things,
Uh-huh.
that unity that underlies all of creation.
Yeah, okay. And that connects back to his definition of love as this sweet madness, right? Because love can break down those walls, those boundaries that we create.
Absolutely. Love is the force that dissolves the ego,
Right.
the force that connects us to something so much larger.
I mean, that's a pretty radical idea. So, I mean, how can we actually apply this to our lives? How do we cultivate that kind of love? The kind that dissolves the ego, the kind that connects us to the divine?
Well, Rumi suggests that transformation is an ongoing process, a journey of growth and evolution. And one of the most powerful ways to embark on that journey is to be willing to embrace change,
Okay.
to let go of those old patterns
Yeah.
and embrace new
So
possibilities.
step outside our comfort zones.
Yes,
Be open to new ways of seeing the world.
absolutely. And this ties into another one of those beautiful analogies that Rumi uses. He talks about ascending through these different states of being,
Okay.
from mineral to plant to animal to human and beyond.
So he's suggesting that we're constantly evolving, constantly moving towards something greater. I mean, that's incredibly hopeful, isn't it?
It is hopeful.
Yeah.
Rumi's vision is one of infinite possibility, of growth and transformation.
Okay.
And he sees death not as an end, but as a transition, a shedding of one form to embrace another. So yeah, I mean, it is a hopeful vision.
It's a beautiful way to look at it, yeah. It makes me think of that image of the bread being transformed from physical nourishment into this spiritual sustenance.
Oh yeah.
Right?
It's fascinating that he takes something as ordinary as eating and uses it to talk about this really profound concept.
Right.
Just as physical food nourishes the body, this spiritual understanding nourishes the soul.
So we're feeding our souls with knowledge, with experience, with that connection.
Yeah, exactly. And this process of nourishment, this transformation, it's fueled by love. It's love that drives our evolution, love that connects us to the divine. And ultimately, it's love that leads us to true fulfillment and happiness.
Yeah.
And, this idea of transformation being fueled by love, it actually leads into something else that you highlighted in your notes. Rumi's perspective on the oneness of reality.
You mean like how even though there are all these outward differences, all religions are kind of pointing toward the same truth?
Precisely. And he uses this simple but really powerful image of the moon reflecting in a well.
Okay.
We might mistake that reflection, for the actual moon, the source of the light.
Right.
Just like we might cling to these specific beliefs or dogmas
Okay.
without recognizing that underlying unity that connects them all.
I see. It's like we get so caught up in the details we miss the bigger picture.
Exactly. Rumi challenges us to step outside those limiting perspectives, to recognize that our own viewpoint, our own beliefs, they're just one facet of a much larger, more complex reality.
I really like that, especially in a world that feels so divided these days. It's kind of comforting, like he's offering a path towards understanding, towards bridging those gaps between us.
And that's where his emphasis on love comes in again.
Okay.
Because Rumi sees love as the force that dissolves those divisions, the energy that connects us back to that divine source.
But isn't that a little idealistic? I
Yeah.
mean, the world is full of so much conflict and suffering. How can love possibly overcome all that?
It's not about denying the reality of suffering or pretending everything's perfect.
Right.
Rumi acknowledges the darkness, the pain, the challenges. We all face those. But he suggests that even in the midst of all those difficulties, there's always the potential for growth, for transformation, for love to kind of shine through.
So it's about finding that glimmer of light, that spark of hope, even when things are really tough.
Yes. And about recognizing that those difficult experiences, the ones that we might want to push away or avoid, they can actually be catalysts for profound transformation.
Okay, so they can help us grow.
Yes. It reminds me of that analogy we were talking about earlier, about the fire refining gold. The heat of that fire is intense and painful.
Right.
But it's through that very intensity, through the fire, that the impurities are burned away, leaving behind something pure and precious.
So you're saying our struggles, our challenges can actually help us to refine ourselves.
Yes, to shed the things that are holding us back from becoming, our best selves.
Right. To become who we're meant to be. It's about seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Recognizing that even the most painful experiences, they serve a purpose.
They do. They do.
But how do we actually put that into practice? How do we learn to actually see those challenges as opportunities instead of just setbacks?
Well, Rumi suggests it starts with a shift in perspective.
Okay.
Instead of resisting those difficult moments, instead of fearing them, what if we approach them with curiosity, with willingness to learn and to grow?
Okay. So we change the way we think about it, but that requires a lot of trust.
It does.
Trust that there's a reason for what we're going through, even if we can't see it at the time.
Yeah. Trust is essential.
Okay.
It's about surrender, about letting go of our need to control everything, having faith that there's this larger wisdom guiding us.
It's funny because earlier we were talking about trusting in God, and now we're talking about trusting in this process of life. It feels like they're really intertwined.
They are. They are. Because ultimately that trust, that surrender, it's rooted in love. Rumi sees love as this fundamental force, the energy that connects us all to the divine and to each other.
So it's not just like a romantic feeling. It's much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Like a way of being in the world.
Yes.
A way of approaching life with compassion, acceptance, a sense of unity with all things.
Exactly. And Rumi's poetry invites us to cultivate that kind of love, to let it radiate outwards and transform our relationships with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us.
It's interesting thinking back to those excerpts you shared.
Yeah.
There's that story about the man who was separated from his beloved and then chased by the patrol.
Oh, yes. Powerful story.
Yeah, and he thought he was running for his life.
Right.
But it turns out he was running towards his beloved. It's like sometimes the path to what we truly desire is not a straight line.
Yeah. And even those experiences that seem negative or frightening, they can have hidden blessings.
Right.
Rumi suggests that sometimes, the universe has to kind of shake us up a bit, push us out of our comfort zones to get us where we need to be.
So trust the process, even when it's chaotic.
Exactly. And remember that the universe, that divine force, is always working in our favor, even when we can't see it.
Okay. That's actually really comforting. But it makes me think about that other story, the one about Canaan refusing to enter the ark with Noah.
Yeah.
Because he relied on his own logic and understanding.
Right, instead of trusting.
Yeah. It's an interesting contrast.
It is.
It highlights the limitations of just relying on our rational minds.
Sometimes we need to go beyond logic.
Yeah.
To trust in something greater than ourselves, to navigate those storms of life.
It's like he's saying there are some realms of knowledge and experience that our intellect just can't grasp.
Absolutely. And sometimes, the wisest course of action is just to surrender to the flow. Just trust those unseen forces that are guiding us.
That's a really powerful message, especially for someone like me who tends to overthink things a lot. It's a reminder to let go, to surrender to the mystery, to trust in the process.
And remember, even in the midst of uncertainty, we're never really alone.
Right.
We're always connected to the divine, to the source of all that love and wisdom.
I feel like this conversation has been so enlightening. It's like Rumi's poetry is like this map. Guiding us through all the complexities of life.
It is.
And pointing us towards a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe.
And it's a map that we can keep coming back to.
Yeah.
Again and again, each time finding new insights.
Right.
And inspiration. Because Rumi's wisdom is timeless.
I'm really struck by how he weaves together these really profound philosophical concepts with these really relatable stories and images. It's like he's making the mystical accessible.
Yeah.
Inviting all of us to kind of participate in this journey of self-discovery.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that invitation is open to everyone. It doesn't matter what your background is, your beliefs.
Yeah.
Rumi's message is universal.
It is.
It speaks to that longing for love, for connection that exists in each of us.
It's like he's saying, hey, you, the listener, you are a part of this too. You are a part of this grand cosmic dance of love and transformation.
Yes. Exactly. And I think that's a message that we all need to hear,
Yeah, we do.
especially in these times of uncertainty and division.
We do. Speaking of division, one thing we haven't really touched on that much is Rumi's perspective on the cyclical nature of life and death.
Right.
He doesn't seem to see death as an ending as much as a transition,
Right.
like a return to the source.
Exactly. He embraces the idea of impermanence, continual change and transformation.
Right.
He uses that analogy of ascending through those various states of being, from mineral to plant to animal to human and beyond.
So are you saying that even death is not the final stop?
That's right. Rumi's vision is one of continual evolution, of shedding old forms and embracing new possibilities.
Mm.
He sees death not as an ending, but as a doorway, a new beginning.
Okay. That's a pretty radical departure from how a lot of people view death. It's almost like we should embrace death, not fear it.
It's not about seeking out death or being reckless,
Right.
It's more about recognizing that natural cycle of life and death, and seeing death as a natural part of that.
So it's about accepting the impermanence of things, letting go of our attachment to things as they are.
Yes. And trusting that even in death, we are held in the loving embrace of the divine.
Okay. That is really comforting. So what does Rumi say about how we should live our lives, knowing that death is not the end?
He encourages us to live fully, to embrace each moment with awareness and gratitude, to love deeply, and to strive to become the best versions of ourselves.
So make the most of this precious life.
Exactly. And recognize that every experience, every encounter, every moment is an opportunity for growth and transformation.
I love that. And it makes me think of that line from one of the excerpts, "The fertile garden of love contains more fruits besides joy and sorrow." It's like he's saying love is about more than just those fleeting emotions.
Yeah.
It's a force that kind of encompasses all of life's experiences.
That's a beautiful observation.
Yeah.
He's challenging us to go beyond that duality of pleasure and pain,
Right.
to experience love as something that transcends all the ups and downs.
So it's a love that's not dependent on our external circumstances,
Right.
but more like a state of being, a way of seeing the world through, I don't know, maybe a lens of compassion, of interconnectedness.
Exactly. And that way of seeing, that perspective, can lead to profound transformation.
Yeah.
Both within ourselves and in the world around us.
It feels like this whole time we've been talking about transformation.
Yeah.
And it makes me think, I think one of the things I struggle with is just accepting that some things are just plain hard. It's one thing to say like, oh, embrace the tough times,
Right.
but it's another to actually do it.
It is. It is.
Does Rumi offer any guidance on how to deal with that?
He does. And it goes back to what we were just discussing about the cyclical nature of life and death. Rumi suggests that even those really, really difficult experiences, those really painful ones, they can actually be catalysts for growth
Okay.
and understanding.
That's a powerful thought, that pain and hardship aren't things to be avoided, but they're opportunities for transformation.
Exactly. And he uses that analogy of fire refining gold, right?
Yeah.
The heat of the fire, so intense and painful, but it's through that very intensity that the impurities are burned away,
Right.
leaving behind something pure and precious.
So he's saying that our struggles, our challenges, can actually help us refine ourselves, shed those things that are holding us back.
Exactly. It's not that suffering is inherently good or desirable,
Mm-hmm.
but it has the potential to be transformative.
Okay.
It can strip away our illusions, our attachments, and help us connect with our true essence, who we really are.
It's about seeing that bigger picture, right? Recognizing that even the most painful experiences can serve a purpose.
Yes, they do. They do.
But how do we actually put that into practice? How do we learn to see those things as opportunities instead of just setbacks?
Well, Rumi suggests it starts with a shift in perspective.
Okay.
Instead of resisting those difficult moments or fearing them, what if we approach them with a sense of curiosity, with a willingness to learn and to grow from those experiences?
Okay, so we kind of change the way we think about them. But that requires trust.
It does.
Right. Trust that there's a reason for what we're going through, even if we can't see it.
Yes. Trust is so essential. It's about surrendering,
Yeah.
letting go of that need to control, and having faith that there's a larger wisdom at work guiding us.
It's funny because earlier we were talking about trusting in God, and now we're talking about trusting the process. It feels like they're so intertwined.
They are.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that trust, that surrender, it's rooted in love.
Okay.
Rumi sees love as the fundamental force in the universe,
Yeah.
the energy that connects us to the divine, and to each other.
So not just like a romantic feeling, but like
Yeah.
a way of being. It's a
Yeah.
way of approaching life with compassion and acceptance and a sense of unity with everything.
Exactly. And Rumi's poetry is an invitation to us to cultivate that kind of love within ourselves, to let it radiate outwards and transform our relationships, with ourselves, with others, and with the world.
This has been such a powerful exploration of Rumi's work, and it just seems like the more we go into it, the more I realize how much depth and richness there is to discover.
Yeah, Rumi's poetry is like a bottomless well.
Yeah.
There's always more to explore, more to learn, more to be inspired by.
And his message still feels so relevant today.
Yeah, it does.
It's incredible to think he was writing centuries ago, but it feels like he's speaking directly to us, offering guidance for how to live now with all the complexities of modern life.
His poetry really does transcend time and culture. He
Yeah.
speaks to something very universal. That longing for love and for meaning, for connection with something greater than ourselves. It's something we all share.
It's been such a pleasure diving into these excerpts with you. I feel like I've gotten a whole new understanding of Rumi's work.
The pleasure was all mine. And remember, this is really just the beginning of the journey. Rumi's poetry is a gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely. So to all of you listening out there, as you go forward on your own journey, keep Rumi's words in mind. What illusions are you clinging to? Where are you placing your trust? What steps can you take to nurture those seeds of love and transformation within yourselves?
Let Rumi's poetry be a companion, on this path of self-discovery. Allow his words to inspire you, to challenge you, and to guide you towards a deeper understanding of yourself and the world.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the wisdom of Rumi's Masnavi. May his poetry continue to illuminate your path and inspire you to live a life filled with love, meaning, and purpose.